much. Let's talk about a few things real quick. The Pete vs. Anxiety Team Anxiety Facebook group. Are you a part of it? You're not? What are you waiting for? The link's down here in the description down below, or go to Facebook and search Pete vs. Anxiety. Then look for the Team Anxiety team page and join it today. Why not? You can join and help. It'll be great. Yeah, like right now. Hurry up. Stop what you're doing. Pause this video. Go do it right now. But anyways, let's also talk about the Pete vs. Anxiety YouTube page. If you're here right now, you're probably following it most likely. If not, head on over there, subscribe, be sure to like and comment on the videos and let me know, because all that stuff really helps, guys. I really appreciate it. And help me break the stigma that mental health is talked about enough. But anyways, guys, let's get into today's episode. I'll have a great one. Thank you so much again. And as I always say, don't ask how your day is, ask how your mental health is today. Guys, welcome to an exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. I have a special guest today. My guest today is an 18-year veteran of the fire force, a mental health advocate, and the host of the upcoming podcast, The Bro Code. Please welcome in the one, the only Terry. Terry, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Not too bad, man. So, Terry, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself and, tell us about that podcast, too, that's coming up, man. I'm excited for this.
Well, a little about myself is, as you said, I've been on the fire department for 18 years as a first responder. Started as a junior when I was 15 years old, and I've worked my way up. I'm full-time with a wildland firefighter. It just runs in my blood, really.
That's so cool, man. What's a wildland firefighter do? So, you may want to break that down for people that don't know.
Well, for wildland firefighting, I work with the state forestry. So,
okay,
pretty much firefighters for wildfires.
Oh, okay,
we're the ones that you see going in the woods and everything like that with wildfires.
That's so cool, man. I bet you've seen some interesting things over your years, so.
I have. I've seen some interesting things, funny things, and things that you just don't want to see.
He said funny things. He's like, yeah, hey, that's probably something you shouldn't do. And you're just laughing at him like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be doing that.
You kind of step back and scratch your head like, how did you do that again?
Poor Terry's he's like, yeah, I knew the outcome of this one's coming. Shit, here we go.
Exactly.
So, Terry,
it's more than putting a ladder up the tree to rescue the cat.
Oh my God, I was waiting for you to say that.
Yep. That's what we have animal control for.
He's like, that's what we got animal control for. I love it. Hey, so Terry, tell us a little more about the Bro Code. How did you come up with the idea for the show?
So Bro Code, unscripted, it come to me one night, and I was actually sitting down with my oldest daughter, and we were just kind of talking. And it just come to me that, men's mental health has been pushed on the back burner.
Yes, it has.
It's been pushed on the back burner, and I figured that I would like to start a podcast that is unscripted, no filters, where we will axe the stereotypes, ditch the stigmas, and we're going to talk straight through it and just basically get down to the bare bones of it, why it's not talked about and what can be changed.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it, man. I absolutely do. You're right. It's not talked about enough. I think mental in general is not talked about enough. If you think about it, a lot of these subjects people get into, they just stray away from, especially men's, because a lot of times we're taught guys aren't supposed to talk about their feelings. You're not allowed to talk about it. But, I've had some previous guests they said that one guy told me in his fantasy football group that somebody had said the conversation piece first about it, and then everybody else started pouring in about it, which was interesting because they all were kind of sitting on the edge waiting for somebody to say something before they all said something about it, And I think it's going to be great, man. I think you're going to find it's going to be a very interesting conversation, especially unscripted, because a lot of times that's how this show goes too, man. We're raw, straight to the point, things like that. We don't really script anything here, man. I have people come on here and I choose a lot of different random topics of things just to try and kind of go across the way. But I think it's going to be an interesting conversation, man, because when I did men's mental health, I was looking at the statistics and it's insane. The numbers are just too high for things not to be talked about. Men are more likely to commit suicide versus females. Or actually, succeed versus females because they talk about it more. Which is, not to say one side is different from the other. But it's interesting. And especially somebody in your field too, man. The things you guys see on a day in day out basis, the mental health struggle there is just real for some of y'all, man. And it's crazy that we don't talk to you guys enough of you guys about it.
I mean, because if you break down the numbers, looking as far as the first responder aspect, you've had 1,405 first responder suicides. So basically, out of all the suicides, 22.4 out of 100,000 suicides are first responders. And then if you break that down to just overall, 80% of suicides that occur are men. And the thing is men make up only 50% of the population, but yet make up 80% of the suicide victims.
Yeah, isn't it crazy, man? Like that number is way too high for us not to be
It
doing
is.
something about this problem. And actually, to your point exactly, for every 100,000, it says about 18 per every 100,000 are actually firefighters, Terry. So people in your actual area, 13 are the general population. So that number is crazy too, just to think about it. And other people think about the things that you guys see, though, like the stuff that you deal with day in, day out, all the fires and things. It's all cool to see and everything, but it's like we don't worry about the people that are actually dealing with directly in front of it.
Exactly. And, you hear a lot of people talk. And when I say people talk about the civilians, you hear them talk sometimes, oh, well, first responders have a dark sense of humor. They're not showing empathy. Well, I'm here to tell you that on the inside, it is eating us up. Because if we were on a call and we were showing empathy, that's going to get in our way. Our feelings will get in our way. So we're basically, I guess you could say, we're wired to take what we see and just file it away in what I like to call chapter 13. File it away back there.
Yeah.
And sadly, we have to deal with it on our own. But at some point, we find some kind of coping mechanism. And if you look at first responders, a lot of their coping mechanisms runs into alcohol, gambling, and
True.
sadly, drugs. And out of all your jobs that you can have in America, as a first responder, the last I checked, had the highest divorce rate out of any career in the country.
Okay, so some of the research actually indicates, as I'm looking at right now, it says that 25% have considered suicide. 12% have made a plan, and some research indicates that the higher rates of suicide ideation is 46.8% suicide plans, 29% were 29% were suicide plans. Ideation was 46.8%, and suicide attempts were 15.5%. Can you guess which one of those it would be? For all the first responders, guess which one they're talking about. You guys right there, Terry, man. They're talking about you guys. And it's crazy, though. People don't look at the numbers like that. Even it says even here, surveys of ENTs say that 37% have contemplated suicide, 6.6% have actually attempted it. Those numbers are crazy. Like these are too big of numbers to not have a conversation about these things, and it's you and I that are going to force these conversations to come out, with Bro Code and with Pete First Anxiety. Dude, we're gonna make some noise out there, man. Somebody's gonna listen eventually and wake up. And especially coming from a first responder's perspective, Terry, I think you're gonna have the jump at the gate too as well, because people are gonna get your side of the story, not just the civilians, but you'll get the actual people that have been through it. So you can speak from that side because you've been there through a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah, and that's the big thing with it. And like I said, I've got a pilot already recorded as well as a couple episodes, and
it's great. By the way, I've got the pilot. I've listened to it. It's phenomenal. I'm so excited for this show.
Awesome, thank you. And one of the episodes that I have recorded my daughters. So not only point of view of mental health from a first responder, but they're also going to be getting point of views from a first responder's teenage daughters.
Yeah, see, that'll be an interesting perspective, honestly, to get their point of view, what they see, because I think teaching them now, Terry, is the best idea. Getting them involved like you are is phenomenal, man.
Yeah. And I get some people telling me that, hey Terry, you shouldn't talk to your daughters with that, or tell your daughters things like that. And I cut to the chase with them. I said, look, I don't want my daughters to go in life and something just smack them. And oh, well, mom and dad didn't tell me this. I want my daughters to be prepared, because my old daughter has come to me and she's wanting to be a paramedic and she's 15 years old, and she already wants to be a paramedic. So honestly, I've told her, I said, look, let's sit down, and I've told her the gruesome things that she's going to see, what to expect to see. I'm not, not trying to talk her out of it by any means, but I've told her, said, look, you've got to be prepared to see death, experience
Mm-hmm.
death, all the things they see. And I mean, I've broke it down to the details, from how bad, fatal wrecks are to, the search and rescue and recovery missions
Yeah.
that paramedics go on.
I
So
love it, man. I think it's
I'm
great.
not sugarcoated, and my kids know that I don't sugarcoat anything.
Yeah. I
And
love
I
it.
want them
Hey,
to be
man,
ready
I
to
love
go.
it. Terry, I love it, man. I love the fact that you're being real with these young ladies and letting them know, hey, listen, these are the things that you're about to experience, and that's powerful right there, man, because you're being straight honest with them. Hey, listen, you want to be in this thing, this is what you need to know. And I don't care what anyone else says, man. I think you're being real with these girls. They need to know now. These younger kids need to know now the things that we deal with, especially these statistic numbers looking at 37% is insane, especially for what she wants to get into. Yeah, that's a lot of things she's going to have to deal with,
Oh yeah.
and it's a lot. And it's real hard too. And and some of the other statistics I am looking at, though, it says that 1,406 first responders were reported to have died by suicide. 75%, in fact, were male police officers at the age of 40. And it's just like I said, these numbers are just insane of the things that you're seeing.
It
You
is.
know, and then it's saying we're breaking it down to from 2016 to 2017. Just give you an idea. The field that she wants to be in, 18% of them were accounted for all the suicides. 18%, man. So I hats off to her to want to be in that field, man. It's a tough job to do. I talk to people every day. Some people have seen some things that just scare you to the bone, man. But I love how you're being real with them now, because I feel like you're preparing her for the worst case scenario outcome could be. Like, hey, listen, you're going to see some stuff, and it's going to torment you. You're just going to have to figure out how you're going to handle it from there.
Exactly. I mean, and as the first responders out there can back me up on this, we all have a saying that when the tones drop, we're always going to expect the worst and hope for the best, because as long as we expect the worst, we're not going to have to think about what to do.
Yeah.
We're going to be able to get in there, do it, and our training.
Yeah.
Because I look at it this way: we're not training to do our jobs better. We train so we can go home at night.
Yeah.
That's why we train. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Some people may be like, well, that's weird, but that's just how I look at it.
Yeah.
I train
No.
so I can go home to my kids at night.
Listen,
And
man.
we're always expecting the worst outcome in excuse me, in anything.
Yeah. No, man, I agree with you, Terry. I think whatever mindset you need to have to get you home to be there for those girls, I think it's what you got to do at this point, man. I don't agree. I care if anybody agrees with you. It's your mindset. You're the one that's been doing this 18 years. You have more experience than most people do at this thing. So I think whatever you have to do that's working, I say continue doing it, man, because with the way these numbers are going, we don't want another statistic on the list. We want a positive statistic too,
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think the other thing she's got to worry about is PTSD, though, too, as well. If you think about it, some of the stuff she may see, man, it's just going to just rattle her to the cage.
And sadly, her and her sister both have experienced my PTSD that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And and I've told them, said, look, not all PTSD is the same. I said, some PTSD is expressed through, like my certain triggers just they zone me out to where I
Yeah.
just kind of sit there and I stare or I shiver. PTSD. Yeah. Mine's not shown in anger or aggression. Mine is just where I just kind of lock up and I zone out. It's just like when those triggers hit for me, I start reading that night or that day. It's just like a 300, an IMAX theater almost inside my head. I see it, I hear the sounds, and I smell it, but yet I'm sitting on the edge of my bed the whole time that it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great description of exactly what it's like for you. And and the fact that you told them it's different for everybody, I think it's a really great point because it doesn't show up in everybody the same way. Everybody has different triggers and things like that. So, that's amazing, man. I love it. I love it. I love you having these conversations with the young ladies. And you said she's 15, right? So it's even better for her to know now about a lot of these things ahead of time so she can prepare herself for the future, and she'll be better informed. Like, my dad was telling me about a lot of this stuff. He spent 18 years doing this, and he's got many more years ahead of him to do these things, and the more that you can keep giving her and the more we have these conversations, I feel like you're preparing her for the future better than most people want you to, because I don't think people like to talk about it, because as you can tell the way they respond, like, oh, Terry, you shouldn't be talking about it. Why not? Why not inform these kids of the things that we deal with on the current basis? Why not make this a real conversation for these young ladies and young gentlemen to have, like, hey guys, these are things we deal with. They don't go away. Certain things you get or just don't go away, depending on what you catch, whatever you come diagnosed with, especially with PTSD, a lot of times it goes into borderline personality disorder, and those people go through a heck of a lot of things.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I feel, and this is kind of how I look at it. A lot of people this time of day is like, oh, you don't need to bring things like. Well, the way I'm looking at it, maybe that's where we need to start. Maybe that's how we slowly start breaking. They start helping understand mental health better to where we're not having as much suicide rates by the time these kids are 20, 30 years old.
Exactly.
I mean, let's start talking to them now. Yeah, because my kids, yeah, they get, my youngest daughter has gotten bullied at school.
Yeah.
But I can tell from what I have told her growing up, it don't affect her. She lets it roll off her back like water on a duck's back.
That's awesome.
And then where you have some kids, and sadly unthinkable because they were picked on, but I've let my daughters know, hey, it's just words. People are going to have words.
Yeah.
But hey, you keep on keeping on.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And,
I agree.
so they keep pushing on.
Yeah.
And I feel we should start talking about mental health at a younger age than what we do.
I agree 100% with that statement right there. We should start at a younger age. I think we should start as early as 15, and maybe even sooner. Just start like giving a little tidbits, because kids as young as 4 can realize a lot of things that are going on around them. Though they can see everything and they know everything. They can see you going through things. I think you having an open conversation about your PTSD and everything else puts them ahead of everybody else going forward. And I think we really should start having the conversation at an earlier age, because then these young ladies and young men get into these things as early as, junior high and things like that, or even middle school, they get picked on, and I got picked on as a kid too. I know what it's like. I remember that. It was not fun. There's times I had thoughts in my head going through, and I've been there. I know what it's like, and it sucks. And my kid's been picked on too. And that's why I get so mad every time I hear that. Like, I get so angry. It's like, listen, we're adding to a statistic. This is just not right. Let's stop doing these things, And like you said, they're words, and it's great that these young ladies are learning that ahead of time, and they're knowing, hey, listen, it's just rolling off their shoulder and it's going. But it's like we have to stop it somewhere, because bullying even isn't even addressed either half the time. A lot of times people just ignore it. They're like, oh no, it's just hazing. Hazing doesn't work out too well for anybody either.
Yeah, exactly. No, it don't.
It's just ridiculous. It's just crazy, and people think it's okay.
Exactly. And then when you break back down the mental health and the stigmas, let's go back to being a teenage boy. You're told, don't cry, don't show emotion, because if you cry, show emotion, you'll never find a girlfriend. You'll never be considered a man. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to break by the time these gentlemen are in their 20s.
Yeah.
So what if you cry or show emotion and you can't get a girlfriend? Well, at the point that you do get a girlfriend, you will have a partner that's going to support you 100%, and that is with you for you and not what you can offer.
Yeah. I love it. I agree 100%. I think that's a great mindset to have. I think that, it's nothing wrong with having emotions, I think that a lot of people view it in a negative light, and I don't know why. It's called being human at the end of the day. We all have emotions. Some people don't want to
Exactly.
deal with them, and those people are worse off than the people that are dealing with them. People that understand their own emotions and things like that, I think are in a better position in life versus the people that don't, because they let all that build up, and then what happens when you put that pressure down too far? It goes, and when it goes off, you don't know who's going to be in the warpath of that whole scenario and things like that too,
that
and
is so right.
it leads to like a lot of those kids being bullied lead to school shootings, and then they have people like yourself that show up to these scenes that are just horrific, like Sandy Hook, with all those poor kids, those little kids that didn't deserve any of that. And it's
No.
just like some of these guys are just like, a lot of people are quick to say, oh, it's mental health. Okay, so it's mental health, and what are you doing about it? Nothing. We're not doing anything about it. We're continuing to let these things happen over and over again.
That
And
has been my argument with these school shootings is, politicians more than anything go back to, oh, it's mental health, but then they say it's a gun problem because they feel they can fix the gun problem easier than the mental health problem. Where actually it would be easier to fix the mental health problem than it would be the gun problem, honestly.
yeah, you're blaming an inanimate object versus somebody that can think, breathe, and make decisions of their own, and then just sometimes can't make their own decisions because they're not in the right state of mind and things like that too.
Exactly.
And I think it's funny that they use that as their point, and everybody's quick to say, "Oh, well, he has mental health issues." Okay, so then what are we doing about this problem? It's great you all want to keep saying that, but where the hell are we doing anything about this problem? We're not. As you just said, and
Yeah.
I just said, we're not doing anything about it. Politicians like to circle it back to, oh, it's gun laws. Guns aren't the reason people are dying. It's the people that are shooting the guns that are making this decision.
Exactly. And they're wanting to put law after law. Well, that's basically just putting a band-aid on a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you take these shooters and you see that most of them had a mental health problem. One had a problem because, well, actually, if we let's go back as far as Columbine,
Mm-hmm.
what was that problem? That was not a mental health problem. That was a bullying problem. These kids were bullied in school, and no one listened to them. So ultimately, and sadly, they ended up doing what they did because that. Okay, well, a lot of schools got better at handling the bullying issues. A lot of bullying, if you look, a lot of bullying slowed down back then. Well, now let's look. Bullying starting to pick up in schools. Well, now they're wanting to take these shootings and say, well, it's a mental health issue or it's a gun issue. Well, let's
Yeah.
stop putting a band aid on a wound that a band aid's not going to fix. And let's
Yeah.
fix the actual problem, which is mental health. If we
Exactly.
could fix bullying in schools, why can't we fix the mental health issue?
Yeah. Well, some schools still haven't fixed bullying completely, but you're right though. They're not. They're not addressing the main issue. They claim it is. It's mental health. Okay. Well, these kids were bullied into these thoughts that And it's funny you say Columbine, because I had a shooting survivor on. She was actually in the library. She said she was close enough she could see the whites of the eyes of the person when we and her interviewed. She had talked to me about it, and I had no idea she was about to tell me this story. But she was like, "Yeah, I was under the table. I could see the guy's eyes, one of the shooter's eyes, the whites of his eyes. That's how close she was." And I was like, "Oh hell no!" And
Wow.
I think it's the ripple effect after that too. It's like the people that go through it's like the things they see. It's like they're traumatized. Like these people are going to need therapy the rest of their life because the things they've seen, the bodies, the shootings, and the noises. And guarantee those like firecrackers set them off or something. Different things like that will set them off, and that'll guarantee a lot of them have PTSD now at this point from seeing all that. And it's like and now we're at the point now we're arming our teachers like they're
Yeah.
military to make sure that we can keep these kids safe because we don't know what's going on. Instead of handling these issues ahead of time and start addressing the problem, which is just mental health. It's because no one talks about these things or nobody notices signs, or these guys are making these funny posts that nobody thinks about. Like, hey, what are they really saying in these messages? And people make comments too. A lot of times you can know something's really wrong because a lot of people make jokes about, they're joking about killing themselves and things like that. To you, it may be a joke. To them, they're telling you they need help without telling you they need help.
Yeah, because I mean, if you go back to our earlier conversation with males, we've been told, hey, don't bother anybody with that. Let's
Mm-hmm.
keep on, bottle it up, go on. Well, then now you've got social media. If you look at some of these memes or comments that guys post, they're crying for help silently.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
They have their man card ripped away from them
Yeah.
because that's what society, sadly, that's how society has portrayed and stereotyped men, that if you cry or you need help, then you're not a man.
Yeah. Or it's
And
a men
and that's
or the
another,
alpha male aspect too, you know?
thing, like, that brought me to my podcast on creating, is just listen. Society, says, the man should provide for the wife and kids. The man should work. The man should do this. The man should do that. This, and this. But then you look at some of these, I guess you say, social media influencers that talk about, oh, well, a man's life is easier than a female. And I'm not trying to, my podcast
No,
in
you
any
know.
way on bashing or being, sexist. It's just basically the stereotypes. Well, it's not always the man's job to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, because if you him to carry the weight of the world on his shoulder, let him, without without taking his man card.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Statistically, 77% of men reported symptoms of mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, or stress. Yet, 40% have never spoken to anybody about it. And that's I think is just, it falls right into what you just said, Terry. As soon as you said that, that's exactly what I'm looking at here. I'm like, this is a great point to follow up with, is that 40% of them aren't talking about it. And it's because of that mindset that they're raised with, saying that basically, hey, you can't be emotional or things like that. You can't show weakness because you're not the alpha male in the conversation. And I think that me and one of my prior guests, we had this conversation. She said that men go do a tower system is how we do things, like alpha male being the top dog and everybody else like that. But he said women do more of a, what did she say? She said it's more like a everybody love everybody type group type thing, or they're trying to fit in like that kind of thing, which is interesting perspective because it's just what it is. The tower system makes sense. So you think about it, because you always want to be that top alpha male, because everybody's like, oh, you got to be an alpha male. Like, what is his name? Andrew Tate out there telling all these young gentlemen, you got to do these kind of things. It's like, no, Andrew, don't tell them that. Don't be telling these young gentlemen that are easily influenced that on social media, or these influencers coming up with all these different things. And it's like a lot of them are so easily influenced by these things, and then they start acting like these things, and then it's like, no, that's the way you shouldn't act. Like, you shouldn't do these things. But it's so hard with social media, because you have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You have all these different ones all the way down there that different people get on, and they're seeing all these different things, and it's like, oh, you got to shelter them. I don't think you have to shelter kids. I think you need to teach them the right way, like teach them the right value, have right values versus what these people are saying. They have to have the ability to decode what the difference between fact and crap are. But there's so much misinformation out there.
Oh yeah.
You're fighting an uphill battle already with that right there and then. So and then go ahead, Terry. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. That was another I preached to my daughters when they were at an early age, and now, especially now that they're teenagers and they're getting in those what you could call cliques. I've told them, said, look, you got to stop you can't be materialistic in life, because when we all went through high school, materialistic. Mm-hmm. If it was name brand, you were in the clique. If it wasn't name brand, you weren't cool. So, back when we were in school, if you look at it like Champion clothing, mm-hmm. Back then when we were in school, you could buy that off the bottom shelf at the back of Kmart. Well, now today kids think that is the awesome, clothes. Back like when we were going to school, it was Abercrombie and Finch, Aeropostale, and all of that stuff. Well, today, and if a lot of these kids understood that, hey, what you're wearing was basically a $5 shirt on the bottom shelf at the back of a Kmart, then I think they'd have a different outlook on everything and stop judging people by their clothes. just because you're not wearing the coolest fashion doesn't make you any lesser of a person. And sadly, a lot of that boils back down to social media influencers,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because a lot of these kids are well influenced. And I
Yeah.
guarantee you've probably had several like psychologists in here that could tell you that a kid is easily influenced.
Yeah, and then, especially females too. Like look at all the things they're doing. Like all these girls are like half dressed on these websites, getting all this
Yeah,
attention. It's giving them the wrong message. They're gonna think that's how they need to dress. Well, I need to have half my body hanging out for a guy to pay attention to me. And it's like,
yeah,
no, a lot of us don't like that. I'm like, it's okay, that's
no,
cool. It's a 5 second view. It's like, okay, that's great, but where does that go from there? The real problem I think for them is I think there's too many people out there giving them the wrong message, and all these girls that are super pretty and things like this that are giving out the wrong message. I do like, though, I do want to say that I do like Jelly Roll's White Bunny. She, I think, sets a really good example for women
she
in
does.
general, because she's just real about shit. She's like, I deal with these
Yeah,
things, da, da, da. And I think that's a great thing with her podcast. So it's like, if she's always just real honest about things. She's super pretty, things like that. But that doesn't mean she doesn't have her own brain cells, And I think that's the problem, is that these girls are seeing these girls do these like Instagram model things like that. That's great, but like, you don't have to do these things to get people's attention. You could do so many other things, that are so
oh yeah,
more meaningful than, and it's hard because all they see is these half naked girls and things like that doing this and that, and these guys doing all these things. And it's like, but I guarantee that most of those girls are dealing with a lot of problems you don't know about in the back scene, and they can't tell you that because they're in the center light of social media, so they can't tell you what they're really thinking, because no one cares about that opinion. They just want to know their hot
exactly,
fashion tips or whatever else
exactly.
their big thing is.
And if you go, it's like TikTok's real bad with the half dress. If you go and just start reading comments, it's kind of sad. You'll see people on there that is all for it. Oh, you do your thing, you're making plenty of money doing that, and then you'll see somebody else saying that's not contributing to society. That's not going to
Mhm.
get you somewhere. And then somebody else will come in and bash them, saying, "Hey, she's making money." Well, okay, maybe she's making money, but with her body.
Yeah.
And you know, way back when, a female known for making money with her body was, had a bad rap. But now it's almost like they're saying, "Hey, now it's okay as long as Well, let's put it this way: if you go in and look, women say, "Oh, well, some men are dirty because he looked at me in my bathing suit," or blah blah blah. Just looking, they would get offended. But yet, then you get their views on social media, like TikTok. It's okay for men and women to look at them because, oh well, I potentially can make money off that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sad. It really is. And I think it's presenting the wrong message. And then some other people too, by the way, that are females that deal with mental health issues. We have some to note that Kristen Bell is one of them. She deals with anxiety, depression, emphasizing the importance of seeking help and breaking the stigma around mental health medications. These are things that she believes. And Katy Perry's another list. Another one of those girls that you see, very pretty, very famous. Everybody thinks she's got it all together, but really in the back scene, she deals with a lot of problems. Chrissy Teigen's on this list. Let's see what we got here. Beyonce's on the list. One of the most notable ones. Beyonce, for sure, right off the bat, deals with PTSD herself and things like that. So it's just crazy that these girls are seeing these images, but nobody's having the real conversations about what's going on in their heads the whole time.
Yeah,
And I think if some of these celebrities came out and started talking about it and said, "Hey, listen, ladies, I understand what you see is this image on Beyonce, da da da, whatever. These are the things I deal with." I think that we'd have a stronger message going out, for these younger ladies and things like that. Same thing for the men. A lot of these guys that don't talk about a lot of the problems they have. Like a couple episodes ago, we were talking about Robin Williams. And the interesting thing about Robin Williams was like what he dealt with is like he had so many different things going on. Like he hallucinated, had depression,
yeah,
he had anxiety, things like all these things that you never even know unless someone told you that Robin was dealing with these things. And myself, I wondered too a little bit with him was that if he was hallucinating, some of these other characters he does, are these hallucinations he's having as he's doing these things, or is it just, and it leads you into a deeper conversation. And then we also talked about another interesting was Heath Ledger, the Joker, when he did The Dark Knight. One of my guests, he has a PhD in psychology. He thinks that the role he took is the reason why we no longer have him anymore, because it was such a detrimental role, because these actors get so deep into these things, they get lost in the roles, and he thinks that was the final thing to push Heath over the edge, with all the other things he was dealing with and stuff like that, and Chris Farley's an unknowable one too, because he had a lot of issues too, and Chris always tried to fit in his documentary they were talking about. Chris was always trying to fit in and things like that. He struggled mentally a lot of times for a lot of stuff, and I think that's what he was self-medicating for, is because of that reason. And no one ever knew, because every time you saw Chris, he was always so excited to be there, always real friendly, and he always put on a mask and, hid things for people. So I think Bro Code Unscripted is going to start making a strong statement as you continue to go about, just men in general needing to talk more about these things. And I think it's going to open the door for people to be okay to talk about it, and things like that. So I think you're on to something, man. You really are on to something, honestly.
Yeah, I mean that's our ultimate goal, is to get people to start stepping out into the light and start saying, hey, screw the stereotype. I'm talking. If my girlfriend or my wife wants to leave me because she thinks I'm lesser of a man, that's fine. Let her go be with some guy that's putting on a fake front.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, every guy that struggles with mental health is putting on a fake front. There's no other way to actually say it. We are putting on a fake front, and I myself am bad for that. I'll sit there and say, "No, I'm good, I'm fine," but then at times I'll get mad, like, "Why aren't you helping me because I'm struggling?" Well, it's because I'm not saying nothing. You're supposed to be able to read my mind,
right? So Terry, let me ask you a question. How's your mental health today?
Today, my mental health is good.
Yeah,
it's good today.
I asked you that question.
Why is that?
Think about it. If I ask you how you're doing today, you're going to say, okay, yeah? If I ask you how's your mental health, you see how the answer changed instantly? Or, oh, it's good today. But there's some days it's bad, Exactly. Some days you may be struggling. And, it's just kind of like doing the thing where people do temper check, and it's something I've asked people before. And a lot of people look at you weird when you ask them that question, because then it opens the conversation further. It's no longer is it, hey, how you doing? It's, hey, how's your mental health today? And people look at you and go, why are you asking me? Because, you seem like a little off, or, things like something's wrong with you, or you feel like something, and I'm really good at reading a lot of people a lot of times. And when I ask them that question, you get a different answer. It's like, you'll get, okay. It's like, hey, how you doing? Like, hey, listen, how's your mental health today, though? Unlocks that conversation further, because now you force them to think about what you just said to them. And they'll come back with either A, they'll tell you, hey, it's good, or B, they'll just respond to you with, well, why are you asking that question? Because you seem like something's wrong. And it starts a conversation. It's just like walking up to a girl and introducing yourself, you're starting the conversation, and it's smoother transition to it, because like I said, that's how I know that people don't talk about it enough, because if you ask people that question, a lot of people don't respond with, well, why are you asking that? It instantly tells you that nobody's asked you that question today, or even asked you about your mental health, because there's a gentleman I talked to, I'd asked him the same question. This guy had said he experienced his friend getting shot and got shot. Okay, so what happened was he was sitting in the car. They were hanging out behind a billiard hall. They were out late one night. Okay, so he said this car passed him, and in the back car is where the friend was and the girlfriend were back there. And what he heard was just loud screams. Couldn't figure out. Walks up and he sees his friend sitting there, lifeless. And he's having to make the call, mind you. Okay, so now fast forward to the conversation me and him are having. I noticed something was off with him. I've seen him come in a lot of times, and it's like, hey man, how you doing today? Are you good? He's like, no, I'm not good, Pete. I'm glad somebody asked me. And he just went straight into this conversation about how no one's asked him how he's doing in general. They said that he's struggling at home. He had an unsupported person at home with him too, was saying, well, you need to get some help or something. That's all they would say, but they didn't ask him how he was doing. And he said, I was the first person in 4 weeks since the incident to ask him, hey, how are you doing? How are you doing yourself? Because you don't seem like you're okay. And you could tell he was struggling bad.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I get that, because, just another little bit of background about me. So I got divorced in 2019. Went through the divorce of, going from having my kids every day to the, standard every other day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following year, my great grandma died. Well, then the year after that, 2021, lost my dad.
Damn.
The day after his funeral, lost my mom. So basically,
Jeez,
both
man,
of my
I'm
parents
sorry to hear that.
were a year
Wow.
apart. And then a year after that, my grandfather passed away. And people still ask me, said, Terry, how are you still going? And at that point, my answer to them was, I don't know if I really am. I think I'm just here.
Yeah, you're just going on autopilot, basically.
Yeah, I'm here. But now, if they were to ask me that question, I would tell them, hey, why shouldn't I be here? Why can't I?
Yeah.
Why should I stop my life because I had that stuff going on? I can take all of that negative energy that happened in the basically a 3-4 year stretch back to back, and I can use it to grow. And that's other stuff that has helped me build this podcast over time.
I'm
And that's
excited for
another
it.
thing that's helped me, or wanted me to become a mental health advocate, not only for men, but first responders in general, because there's really not a lot of light shed on first responder mental health. And when we say first responders, we're not talking about just fire, EMS, and law enforcement. Yeah, we all joke and play, but even the numbers online don't represent this, and I think they should on whoever is doing these statistics. But the first person affected as a first responder are your 911 dispatchers.
Mm-hmm.
They are a voice they're that voice. They're that hope that this person needs. And when they, answer, 911, what's your emergency? And from that point on, it's just chaos in their ear, screaming, yelling. And when they hang up, they've got to go home wondering what happened. At
Yeah.
least with us as fire, EMS, and law enforcement, we know what happened. But once they hang that phone up, when fire and EMS or law enforcement gets there, most of them don't know the outcome. They don't know if they survived or if they perished.
Yeah.
And
I think
and
that's a
that's
really great
another
point.
thing. That's another thing in the first responder community as a whole, is taking the dispatchers and putting them under our wings, because and honestly, as a dispatcher, it's more of a predominant female career than anything.
Yeah.
And so, we need to take most of these women, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of guys that are in it too. But if you look at a lot of your 911 dispatchers, they're females.
Yeah.
So, these ladies, they're hanging up the phone and they're not knowing what's happening, but yet nobody talks about dispatchers, when dispatchers are our eyes and ears in the field. If we're needing something done or another resource ordered, 911 are the ones that gets it for us, and we tend to overlook that. So
Yeah.
we can't sit here and blame society as a whole as first responders. At some point, we've got to step back and blame ourselves in a way too.
Yeah.
You
No, I
know,
agree. I think that's a great point of view, though, Terry. I really do. Thank you including them in the conversation, because they are a part of the team, and I've always looked at them, everybody is part of the team. Anybody that does anything in that field of anything else, even nurses and doctors fall into first responders, kind of, because they're the ones that deal with the aftermath when you guys bring them to them. Because if not, without them, you guys can't work together as a team. You're bringing them in, giving them all the information on what's happening, and they're having to deal with it from there, and it's just, I don't think people talk about it enough. I think it's a great point of view, honestly. I think it was a great idea for an interview, too, is to have some of them come on and share their thoughts about what they think about that kind of stuff, because I think you're going to get a very interesting response from them.
Yeah. And like I said, that's going to be something we're going to eventually implement into bro code is like once a month having a special episode. I've got a couple veterans that are going to come and speak.
Heck yeah.
Different people from different, I guess you could say, high stress jobs, and how they deal with the stress and everything and stuff like that. So hopefully with doing that, we'll shed more light on it, because if you look at it right now with mental health, excuse me, all you see is, okay, well, that's mental health for first responders, mental health for veterans, mental health for men. Okay, great. I'm glad the light is being shined on that. But why don't we shine the light further than that? Because the further you shine the light, the more you see, and the more you see, the more you can fix.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I agree 100%. I think that's a great point of view. Is that, and that's what I aim with this podcast. Is that's why I invite all different aspects. I don't care what they specialize in, men's, female, whatever, all the different aspects of everything. I've had so many interesting people to this day on this show alone, of just different people I've talked to about just different aspects they go into. And that's why I keep an open eye mind about anybody that messages me. A lot of times they're like, hey, and they tell me these stories, and I've read some wild things that people have said to me, and I'm just like, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't I want you? Because a lot of people, I think, get told no, but I'm like, why not? Let's add them to the conversation. Why not? I don't see the point of turning away any kind of conversation unless they have like some extreme views that I'm just like, yeah, I think that's a little too extreme for what I'm doing here. Which I've had one or two that just, I'm like, yeah, you really don't make much sense with what you're saying. Like, I'm open to anybody's opinion, but if you don't really have a point, I just don't see the point behind it. But I don't stir away from any conversations. I even had a sex therapist on here, a sex addiction therapist on here too, man. And I thought it was an interesting conversation, because I told somebody about that. I was like, yeah, I just talked to a guy for an hour about sex addiction, and they're looking at me weird. And I'm like, hey, why not? Why not have the conversation? It's interesting to find out statistics of things that you find out.
It's an addiction, yeah.
And I even read a woman's book about her breast cancer memoir or whatever, and people are looking at me weird about that too. I said, why? What's wrong with understanding how these people's thought process works? In fact, I think she said when I interviewed her, Erica told me that she said that she had a lot of males reach out and say that thank you, because now they understand what their point of view of their partner was dealing with, or the mindset of these people that are going through these things, And then, like I said, I don't stir away from any topics. I think there's only like maybe 3 or 4 people I've had to say no to. But it's because they just didn't make sense. Like, you're just coming on here and you're not making sense. You just want to be on a podcast to be on a podcast. It's not, you're here for a purpose, or you don't have a reason. It's like, And at the end of the day, it's your show. You decide how this thing goes. And if people don't like it, okay, then don't listen to it. I'm sorry, but this is my show. It's my name on the line. I decide how this thing goes, And I'm very selective when it comes to certain people on the show and things like that too. And I know you reached out to me, and I was sitting here thinking about it this morning. I had a last minute cancellation. Thankfully, Terry was here, man. It's like, hell, that's right. Terry was, me and him were talking about, he's like, June. I'm like, fuck June. Let's get you on now.
Awesome. Yeah.
So it worked out. Fate, man. Fate worked out real well. I have this thing where I've been getting these people in my, put in my path that I'm just like, I got a good feeling about. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember your message. And I was going through my messages, and I'm like, oh, that's right. Terry told me he wanted to be on. Let's hit him up. What the hell? And had I known we were going to have this fantastic conversation, I would have booked this sooner, but it's just how fate worked out for us, man. And it's awesome. So what's the timeline on Bro Code? I know we talked about it off air. It's about 2 months out, right?
About 2 months out. Cause we're, I myself am still learning editing, because I've never been the tech savvy person. I'll be the first to admit it. So still learning how to edit and get things. We're basically trying to come up right now with basically a good intro and outro that really fits it, that just fits the Bro Code, goals.
Yeah. Yeah, you listen, man. I'm going to be honest with you. I've changed my intro so many different times. I have different things. I try different things all the time. So my lighting has changed. As you saw in the intro video, I had a dark background setting. And then I got gifted a whole setup here. So now I've got an extra external light I'm using now. I'm trying different things to see what works and what doesn't stick. And I've been doing podcasting for 2 years. I had a show originally called Pete's Corner Store where I did just general conversations about things, and it's still out there if anybody wants to listen to it. I apologize for season 2 and beyond, because it got a little wild. The conversations got a little out of hand, and it was just me messing around with a friend, trying some stuff to see what what it was like, because I always wanted to start a podcast. And then I stumbled into this one. And little did I know what was going to happen next, is because by the time I was the third week into this show, I was already booked to the end of the year of this last year of 2024. So then come November, I'm out to July of 2025. And I'm telling people, it's like July. I'm like, yeah, I wish I could make this up for you, but the calendar doesn't lie. It's out to July. And then beginning of the year, it started hitting August. And then we hit September. And then we're in October, where I'm at now. And it's just like, I didn't realize there was such a demand, in the beginning. But now it's like, now I've realized that this is something that needs to be talked about, because based on the demand alone. And then I opened Tuesday through Friday out, like we were discussing, and I'm out to July on that one now. So it's so interesting to see the demand of things that just go on, and the different people I get to meet. People are like, hey, I appreciate what you do. And it's all I'm doing is having a conversation at the end of the day. I'm bringing people like yourself on, and we're just talking about mental health. Like, I love to meet new people. So every time I hit record, I deal with anxiety myself. My anxiety kicks up because you don't know how the conversation is going to go, and you never do. So far, it's been great. We've had a couple shit moments on this show, We had a guy at the beginning of the year. He told us that he had thought about killing himself that morning. He was sitting at the edge of his bed. He had the gun in hand. He had the thoughts going through his head. And he said right that morning, he started sharing it 30 minutes into the show, which is interesting because I think people started freaking out because they were like, oh, God, is he okay? I'm like, yeah, he's talking to us. I think that's where we run away from, is that people don't realize that when they're talking to you, that's better than them saying nothing at all, because a lot of times guys don't even talk to you. We won't say shit to you. We'll just do it, and if this guy he's willing to share it with us live, Brian is actually a good friend of the show. I'm inviting him to come back to a men's mental health panel I'm putting together. And actually, Terry, I'm going to have to invite you too. I'll have to figure it out so we can have you come in and things like that. But, it was an interesting conversation because Brian had gotten the most responses ever that I've gotten. I'm not laughing at that. So I just thought it was funny. The way people reacted was just like, they're like, oh my God, is he okay? I'm like, yeah, he's fine. What do you mean? I think him getting that off his chest, it changed the way he felt, because if you watch him in the interview, his demeanor changes completely, and he gets a little more comfortable. And, and a lot of people on this show, man, like a few minutes in, once you get them real warmed up in the conversation, you get people to say anything. Like, I've had several people come on and tell me some crazy stories. One girl said she was in the middle of a shootout as a kid. Someone had tried to shoot at her as a kid. Her son has been in a shootout. Like, Terry, the story's just going everywhere. I'm like, where the hell are we going with this thing? Yeah. And trust me, man, you're about to unlock a door to some really fun conversations, man. I think you're going to really like where you go with these and things like that. And I told Terry that I was going to tell him, a friend of mine, Rory, does a podcast called The Podcaster Nation. So I told him I was going to get him linked up with him because, Rory's actually going to be a guest on the show too. He's got an interesting story too. He also does one, what's it, Power of Man or something like that. He has another one he might be interested in doing too, though. I'll have to see what he says, because I'm not sure what he picks for those guys for that. But like they said, man, you're about to get into something real fun, man. And hats off to you, man. I appreciate you. 18 years of doing this stuff, having to go through what you've gone through in the 18 years. I'm sure you could tell people to turn their hair white. Stories of things that they wouldn't believe firsthand that you've seen.
Yeah, a lot of things that I've seen, you kind of just got to be there to experience it. I mean,
well, and hats off for being a single father as well, man. You're teaching these girls a lot of things now that they're gonna use later in life. That's gonna be amazing. And I don't care what anyone says to you, man. I think you're doing the right thing. You having these open conversations with these young ladies and getting them prepared for the future is exactly what a parent should do. You should get these guys ready to handle the future things. And I think you're doing it right by talking about these problems now, because, they could save somebody's life one day. Even the EMT would sure will be saving people's lives. She's going to have lots of stories and a lot of things to deal with, but she'll have you to fall back on, though, because you've been there, and, you can help her out when, things get rough and things like that too. So, I would just tell her to just be open and honest about things and talk to people about it. Don't keep the things to yourself. I think that's the biggest problem that we have, is that people don't talk to other people, or, and have a good support system. It's my other thing for people too, is, have people you can call and talk to about these things. She'll have you, and she can have some other friends and things like that, and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's great, man. I love what you're doing. I love Bro Code. I think it's going to be a great idea. I'm so excited to hear it. I got the pilot ready. I love it. I'm excited to see this thing as it goes. And you know, like I said, man, I'll be promoting it to everybody I know, telling people about it because I love what you're doing, man. I think that you're about to have an interesting conversation, and you're gonna find a lot of really crazy stories like I did, you know. But at the same time, you're gonna be forcing the conversation to come out in the you know, especially from a first responder's point of view, because I think you're in the untapped area that no one really talks about a lot, you know, in the conversations. So it's always great to get a first responder's point of view on here to get their point of view of what things go on, because, you know, all these experts that come on will tell you that you guys deal with things first before anybody else. You're the first ones to deal with these kind of things, you know, and the stuff you see, it's just make your skin crawl.
And you know, and that's another thing why I'm moving my daughters in on the show too, is because I've looked and you never find a video or a vlog or a podcast even that has children of first responders talking about their feelings around that. And even, you know, my youngest daughter, she's wanting to start a podcast now.
Heck yeah. What does she want to do about it? Any ideas?
And everything. So not only eventually, you know, my youngest daughter will be having her podcast where it's just her and I
love it.
You know,
I love it. I think it's great. I think podcasting is so much fun, man. It really is. I think she's gonna have a blast. You know, I think it's really great. And you know, and you guys reach out if you have any questions or anything. I'd love to help you where I can. You know, stuff like that. Yeah. And y'all need any guests ever? I'll come on. I'll talk to y'all. I'm always down for podcast spots. I love it. I try to do as many as I can. I know I did one that called. There's another one actually too. I'm going to talk to you about as well. It's called Humanity 2.0. I think you'd be great for the show. I think that you're asked that what you're about to embark on. I think it's something that we need to get you out there. And I've actually interviewed the host of the show, and I've been on the show myself. So, you know, things like that. I think it's going to be really great, man. There's so many different shows I'm thinking of now that I can suggest you for, that I just think you should get on there and just start spreading the message about what you're about to embark on, especially with June coming up being Men's Mental Health Month. I think you're getting ready to jump into some really interesting conversations.
Yeah, and that's what we were actually hoping to shoot for, to drop Broco, was in June, kind of for that whole Men's Mental Health Month. But with the way work has been and everything, it just don't look like it's going to pan out that way. But hey, at least we're still getting it out there, and that's all that matters to me, is we're going to get it out there.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree.
It's going to be there.
Listen, man, you do it at your own pace, honestly. You know, that's really what I could tell you about it. So, all right, as we get ready to start wrapping up, Terry, did you want to plug where your show's going to be? I think you said Spotify's where you thinking about dropping it on.
Yeah, Spotify.
Okay, all righty. Well, definitely, guys, I will definitely get you all the information as soon as it drops. As soon as we know when it's coming out, I will definitely plug it for you guys here. I'll make sure I put it in the description of this video when we get the updated time. Everything like that. For anybody's listening to this on the audio side, when it hits the audio side, for sure. Bro Code may be out by then. If not, if it is, I will definitely have the link in the description for the show so everybody knows where to find him. So everybody go support Terry and everything he's about to embark on. And guys, you know, as I always say, you know, I'm Pete for Anxiety. I'm pretty much on everything. I'm down down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify, all the way down to iHeartRadio, guys. And as I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing. Be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do can save someone's life, or hell, you can even save their day. I'm Pete for Anxiety, saying, don't ask how your day is. Say, hey, how's your mental health today?